first thing you notice is not the building. It is the distance. The road behind you is only a pale track across the high desert, and the walls of the canyon have held the late afternoon light for hours. Wind has moved through greasewood and across open ground. The sky seems much larger than anything people could build beneath it. Then you turn toward the center of the canyon, and the scale changes. Stone walls rise in careful lines. Rooms gather behind rooms. Curved sections meet long straight walls. Plazas open inside a building that has been planned rather than simply allowed to grow. Beyond it are other structures, other communities, roads, water control features, and places whose meanings are not all recoverable to us. You are in Chaco Canyon, in the region now called northwestern New Mexico, around 1,000 years ago. And tonight, the canyon is not an abandoned ruin. It is part of a living world. The largest structure before you is Pueblo Bonito. From above, its plan would later be described as D-shape. On the ground, the shape is harder to understand because the building is simply too large to take in at once. At its height, Pueblo Bonito rose 4 or 5 stories and contained more than 600 rooms, dozens of kivas, and 2 major plazas. But numbers do not explain what it feels like to approach it. The walls are made from sandstone and careful masonry. Timbers support floors and roofs. Doorways lead through sequences of rooms. Some openings are small and practical. Others connect spaces whose use has changed over generations. Construction here has not happened in a single season. Great houses such as Pueblo Bonito were planned, expanded, repaired, and used across decades and centuries. Their builders quarried stone locally, but many of the timbers required for construction came from forests far beyond the canyon. That detail changes the way the building feels. Every beam represents distance. Every wall represents labor. Every room is part of a system large enough to organize people, materials, food, ceremony, exchange, and time. By around the middle of the 11th century, Chaco had become the ceremonial, administrative, and economic center of a much wider region in the San Juan Basin. Roads and related great houses connected the canyon with communities spread across an enormous landscape. This was not a city in the modern sense. And Pueblo Bonito was probably not simply an apartment block filled permanently with hundreds of families. Researchers and descendant Pueblo communities describe Chaco as something more complicated, a gathering place, a center of public architecture, ceremony, exchange, administration, and shared knowledge. At certain times, people may have arrived from communities far beyond the canyon. So the evening before you does not belong to a people who somehow slipped out of history. It belongs to many people, many journeys, and many relationships that continued beyond Chaco itself. As the light lowers, the canyon begins to cool. Chaco is a difficult place to farm. Winters can be long. The growing season is short. Rainfall is limited and unpredictable. Water rarely arrives in the convenient ways a large community would prefer. And yet people built here on a monumental scale. That contradiction is one of the reasons Chaco remains so compelling. To live in this landscape, water has to be noticed. A storm on distant ground can matter. Runoff moving from the mesa can matter. The shape of a wash can matter. Archaeologists have identified catch basins, canals, check dams, and ditches associated with Chacon sites. These features do not transform the high desert into a lush valley. They show instead how closely people had to understand movement across the land. Water, soil, slope, season. A successful system begins with attention. Near the great houses, activity is becoming quieter, but has not stopped. People move through the plazas. Food and stored materials are carried between spaces. Someone passes through a doorway and disappears into shadow. Another person crosses an open area with an object held close to the body. You do not need to invent their conversation to understand the practical rhythm. A place this large requires organization. Rooms store things. Paths connect work. Fire provides heat and light. Food must be prepared. Water must be carried. Visitors must be received. Goods arriving from elsewhere must become part of local life. Some materials found in great houses traveled remarkable distances. Turquoise appears throughout the Chaco world. Shell came from far away. Macaws and copper bells connected Chaco to exchange networks reaching toward regions far to the south. These objects are striking, but they should not turn the canyon into a fantasy marketplace. Most of the evening is made from ordinary materials: stone, wood, fiber, clay, corn, water, hands. The extraordinary network depends on ordinary work. As sunset reaches the upper walls of the canyon, the masonry changes color. Warm light catches the higher surfaces first. Lower rooms and doorways become dark. The great house seems to lose detail from the bottom upward. Then the direct sunlight disappears. There is no electric light waiting to replace it. No distant city glow. Darkness arrives as a real condition. Small fires and lamps can illuminate nearby faces or a patch of plastered wall, but they cannot erase the night. This is where the scale of Chaco changes again. During the day, the architecture commands attention. At night, the sky does. The people who built Chaco paid close attention to celestial cycles. National Park Service research and interpretation note that many Chacoan buildings were oriented toward solar, lunar, and cardinal directions. Astronomical markers and carefully placed architectural relationships appear throughout the Chacoan landscape. That does not mean every building had a single celestial purpose. It does not mean every wall had one hidden astronomical purpose. The more interesting reality is that architecture, landscape, direction, ceremony, and celestial observation could belong to the same world. At Casa Rinconada, a great kiva south of the main Great House concentration, modern observers can still witness documented relationships to equinox and solstice sunrises. At Kin Kletso, interpretation also notes a winter solstice sunrise alignment. The sky was not background. It was part of orientation, part of season, part of memory, part of the way people understood where they were. Tonight, however, nothing needs to happen dramatically. No eclipse is required. Nothing dramatic or speculative has to be added. The night can simply become dark. The canyon walls disappear first. The upper edges remain as black shapes. Above them, stars become easier to see. Modern Chaco is protected as an international dark sky park, and the clarity of its night sky helps contemporary visitors understand something simple that people here always knew. When artificial light is absent, the sky is not empty darkness. It is structure. Stars rise. Constellations change position. The moon, when present, changes the shape of shadows. The horizon matters because it gives celestial movement a place to begin and end. A person who watches the same horizon through many seasons can learn what returns. This kind of knowledge does not require modern instruments. It requires repetition, tension, memory, and time. The great house below the stars is quieter now. A fire glows inside one room. Somewhere else, a doorway briefly brightens as a person passes. The plazas hold larger pools of darkness. You can imagine the sound of footsteps on packed earth, a ceramic vessel placed carefully down, the faint movement of wind over a roofline, but the canyon itself is the dominant soundscape. Wind, distance. Oh, so human activity. Long spaces between them. The stillness is not emptiness. People are resting. Materials are stored. Food remains protected. Roads wait for daylight. The buildings continue to hold their geometry, even when almost no one can see it. That matters, because Chaco is not only Pueblo Bonito. Beyond the main canyon, related great houses and communities spread across the San Juan Basin. More than 150 outlying great houses are known in the wider Chaco system, and prehistoric roads linked many of these places across the region. The road system crossed long distances and connected Chaco with communities beyond the canyon. Their exact purposes were not identical in every place and remain the subject of interpretation. Movement, communication, ceremony, and regional organization may all have mattered. What is certain is that Chaco was connected. A person looking into the night from the canyon was not standing at the edge of an isolated village. They were inside a regional system. The roads disappear into darkness, but the relationships they represent do not. The same is true of the people themselves. Chaco is sometimes spoken about as though its people simply disappeared. That framing is not supported by the longer history. Modern Pueblo peoples are descendants of ancestral Pueblo peoples, and many Pueblo communities maintain cultural relationships with Chaco. Navajo histories and clans also hold deep connections to the canyon. For descendant communities, Chaco is not simply a dead archaeological site. It is an ancestral homeland, a sacred landscape, and part of living cultural history. That changes how the night should be imagined. Not as the final scene of a people about to disappear, not as a mystery waiting for outsiders to solve, but as one moment inside a much longer human story. Deep into the night, the temperature drops further. The high desert releases the warmth it stored during the day. Inside thick masonry rooms, conditions would have been more sheltered than in the open plaza. The walls reduce direct exposure to wind, and the architecture changes the experience of night without needing to make it comfortable by modern standards. Outside, the stars continue moving. Inside, people sleep. There is something unusually quiet about that contrast. A monumental regional center can be described through trade networks, astronomy, roads, engineering, and social organization. But at midnight, history becomes smaller. A blanket, a wall, a stored vessel, a banked fire, a familiar doorway in darkness. Someone sleeping in a room built by earlier generations. The canyon does not need to be mysterious in that moment. It only needs to be inhabited. Hours pass. The eastern sky begins to change before the sun appears. At first, the stars simply lose brightness. Then the canyon walls separate from the sky. Their outlines become visible again. Cold gray light reaches the plazas. A person moves. Then another. A fire is encouraged back into stronger flame. A container is lifted. The first morning tasks begin before the great house is fully illuminated. This is when celestial alignment becomes practical rather than theatrical. The horizon brightens in a known direction. At certain times of year, sunrise lines up with architectural relationships that have been watched and remembered across generations. The sun does not reveal a secret. It reveals recurrence. Another day, another point in a seasonal cycle, another return of light to stone. As sunlight reaches Pueblo Bonito, the upper walls brighten first. The building that became nearly invisible during the night slowly returns room by room, edge by edge. Now the roads can be followed again. Work can resume. Visitors can arrive. People can move between communities. The system wakes because daylight restores distance. Much later, construction at the great houses will slow. Chaco's role as a regional center will change. People will move toward other places across the Southwest, joining and helping shape communities whose descendants are still here today. There is no single moment when everyone disappears. No abandoned city waiting silently for history to end. There is movement, reorganization, continuity. The story travels with the people. That may be the most important thing to carry away from Chaco. The buildings are extraordinary because they survived. But survival of stone is not the same as survival of culture. The living connections are larger than the ruins. Morning now fills the canyon. Pueblo Bonito sits beneath a pale blue sky. Its walls contain rooms, kivas, plazas, passages, and generations of decisions. Beyond it, roads reach outward toward a region that once understood this canyon as a center. Above it is the same sky that will return tonight. And for one quiet moment, before the day becomes busy, the relationship is simple. Stone below, sky above, a human world between them. Not a lost city, not an astronomical machine. A place where people built carefully, watched closely, gathered, exchanged, remembered, and continued.